This video will show you how to take data that you put in your notebook and make it into a graph for Excel. So I have some sample data here I recorded in my notebook. I looked at how far somebody ran as a function of time. So if I want to take that data and put it into Excel and make a graph of it. And you can see here I've already preloaded some data. Time is time in minutes and distance in miles. And what's important with Excel is that you need to know which is your X value or your independent variable and what are going to be your Y values or your dependent variables. So for me, I decided time would be my independent variable because time just kind of marches along. It doesn't depend on anything. And I'm just going to write down that it's X. You don't need to do this. I'm just doing this to show you. Now distance, of course, distance, how far somebody ran, depended on how long they were running. So that's why that's Y. And the reason why it's important to know this is in Excel, it's much easier if you make your X variable your leftmost column and your Y variable is in the right column. So once I have my X and my Y data entered, I need to select my data, meaning I want to do this. Now that looks pretty easy, but people often struggle. And the reason is in order to select the data, you click on the top left cell, and I just click there, and I press and hold my left mouse cursor, and I drag. Now the problem is if you click here, but you don't have this white cross, like if you have these two intersecting arrows, or if you have this black cross, you will do something else. Like this actually drags my data to another location. See, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to hit undo. So make sure that you have a white cross and then you press and hold your left mouse click and drag. So now that I've selected my data, I want to insert my chart. So go to the Insert tab, and you can see I have all these different chart options here. Many students think that they want what's called a line chart, and I'll just show you because this gives you sample previews. This is not what you want, okay? We don't want something that looks like that. In science, in general, you want this option. It's called a scatter chart. So most of the times you want to make a scatter chart. And again, you have options. I'll go over them, see like all these different options. Now you don't usually want to connect your individual data points with a line, and we don't want these crazy ones either. So just click your most basic scatter plot here. And now my chart has been added to my graph, and what I need is I need a title and I need axes labels. So if I click this plus button, that adds my chart elements, and I'm going to put a check mark on axes titles. And the other thing I'm going to want is a trend line. So this is linear least squares regression. So if I put a check mark here, then I want my equation on the chart. And if I click the over arrow and I go to more options, I get this dialog box, and you may be on the wrong icon up top. It depends on what you did last. So make sure you're on this third icon to the right, and that will have options to display equation on the chart and display your R squared value or your fit on the chart. And then I can just close this, and I obviously need to fix my axis titles. So if I click on the x-axis title and I highlight it, I can just do time in minutes. Always you want your units. The other option, instead of highlighting it, because it is a little awkward when it's sideways on the y-axis, is I can just type up here in my formula bar instead, and I can say distance in miles and hit enter. And then for my chart title, again, I could either highlight and type, or I could go right up here and I can just type my title in. And I can hit enter, or I can hit my checkbox, and that enters my title. So here's my equation. So one other thing I want to show you is this equation is used for forecasting or interpolating, really. So if I want to know at 90 minutes how far my runner ran, well, 90 is my x value, so I'm going to use this equation and put 90 in for x, and I can do it right here in Excel if I want to, or I could do this with a calculator. If I want to have Excel do some math for me, though, I need an equal sign to start the formula, and then I would enter my slope, 0.1289, multiplied by, which is a asterisk, which is over the 8, multiplied by, what did we say, 90 minutes, minus the intercept, 0.4533, and enter. And you can see that is my distance in miles. Now, conversely, like let's say that I wanted to know how many minutes it would take my runner to go 13 miles. Well, now I need to solve for x. So I would say y is 13, so I'd say equals, and I'm going to say 13 plus 0.4533, my intercept, divided by 0.1289, which is my slope, and enter. And it says units of minutes. So you can say at 13 miles, okay, 13 miles, it would take about 104 minutes. And it's always a good idea to double check, look at your graph, make sure you did your math correctly. And so that makes sense. It looks like at 13 miles, yeah, it would take about 104 minutes. And you may remember from the atomic spectroscopy lab, if you need to adjust the decimal places, you can using these increase or decrease decimal button. And then the final trick that I would like to show you is how to move your chart into its own sheet, because if you want to print it from here, it's a little bit awkward. So in order to do that, what I need to do is right click up here in the white area, and there'll be this option to move the chart. So say if you're in the plot area here and you right click, you don't get that option. Also, if I'm over a title and I right click, that option's not there. So I have to be out here in the white area, and then I can say move chart, and I want it as a new sheet, and I can name it graph, whatever I want, say OK. And so now my graph is its own sheet, and so if I go to print it, it will print as a full page. Also, if I had multiple sheets going and I wanted to rename this, I would right click and I can go to rename, and I can call this data. So that's all. So try this yourself and good luck.